A billionaire CEO's twin daughters were frozen literally catatonic for 14 months after their nanny died in front of them. 10 specialists quit. Then a night janitor left them smooth stones and changed everything. But when the twins' father sued for custody to steal their inheritance, the case came down to one impossible question. Could two girls who'd been silent for over a year find their voices in time to save their family? This is that story. Before we continue, please tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to see more of our stories. Victoria Chen stood frozen in her office doorway, hand gripping the frame so tightly her knuckles went white. Through the glass wall separating her executive suite from the observation room, she saw something impossible. Her daughters were moving. Actually moving. Lily and Ruby, 8 years old and identical down to the small scar above their left eyebrows, were on their hands and knees arranging something on the floor. Their movements were deliberate, focused, alive. For the first time in 14 months, they looked like children instead of porcelain dolls someone had positioned and forgotten. A man in a maintenance uniform sat cross-legged against the far wall, watching them with quiet patience. A boy around their age sat beside him, wearing bright yellow noise-canceling headphones, completely absorbed in creating a spiral pattern with smooth stones. Victoria's assistant, Janitor, appeared at her elbow and whispered, "I thought you knew. He's been coming every night for 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Victoria's voice came out strangled. Who authorized this? No one. He just started showing up after his shift. The overnight attendant said the girls seemed calmer, so she didn't report it. Victoria watched as Ruby carefully placed a white stone at the center of a circle her sister was forming. The movements were slow, cautious, but they were voluntary, real. Not the terrible frozen stillness that had defined the past year. "Get me his file," Victoria said. "Everything. Now." 6 weeks earlier, Marcus Rivera had clocked in for the night shift at Chen Technologies the same way he had for 3 years. Quietly, methodically, invisibly. His supervisor barely looked up from his tablet when he entered the basement maintenance office. "Rivera, need you on 47 tonight. Private therapy suite. Someone spilled juice all over the floor." Marcus nodded and collected his cart. He didn't mention that he'd cleaned that same room the night before. And the night before that. Spilled juice was the excuse they used when they needed the space sanitized after another specialist gave up on the Chen twins. The building was nearly empty at 9 p.m. Marcus pushed his cart into the service elevator, listening to the mechanical hum as it climbed. His phone buzzed. A text from his son Leo's after-school counselor. Leo had a good day today. Participated in group activity without prompting. Small victories. Marcus smiled slightly and pocketed the phone. Small victories were everything. The therapy suite on the 47th floor was all glass walls and minimalist furniture. Designed to be calming, it mostly felt cold. The behavioral specialist was packing her bag when Marcus arrived, her movements sharp and frustrated. "They're all yours," she muttered, not looking at him. 14 months. 14 specialists. Nothing. They just sit there like little statues. It's unnatural. She left without another word. Marcus began mopping, his movements unhurried. He'd learned long ago that rushing created noise, and noise created stress, and stress made everything harder. The twins sat on floor cushions against the far wall, backs perfectly straight, hands folded in their laps, eyes fixed on the middle distance. They hadn't moved since he'd entered. Hadn't blinked. Their matching blue dresses were immaculate, hair brushed to glossy perfection. They looked like they were posing for a portrait that no one was painting. Marcus knew that look. He'd seen it on his son's face for 2 years after Anna died. The look of a child who'd decided that stillness was safer than movement, that silence was safer than sound, that disappearing was safer than being seen. He finished mopping and stood there for a moment, studying them without staring. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a smooth black stone. Volcanic glass. Obsidian. He'd found it on a beach in Oregon 5 years ago, back when family vacations were still possible. The stone was cool and heavy, edges rounded by centuries of waves. Marcus walked to the center of the room and placed the stone on the floor, exactly 3 feet from where the twins Saturday. Then he collected his cart and left without saying a word. The next night, he left a piece of white quartz, milky and translucent, shot through with tiny fractures that caught the light. He placed it beside the obsidian and continued his work. The overnight attendant, a tired woman in her 50s, scrolled through her phone in the corner and didn't look up. On the third night, Marcus brought a blue lace agate. When he bent down to place it with the others, he noticed something that made his breath catch. The stones had been moved. Not much, just repositioned, arranged in a small line instead of the random cluster he'd left them in. Someone had touched them. On the fourth night, he brought rose quartz. Warm pink, smooth as silk. This time, he didn't just place it and leave. He sat down against the opposite wall, a respectful distance away, and pulled out his own stone, a river rock, gray and ordinary, that he'd carried in his pocket since Anna's funeral. He began rolling it slowly between his palms, the gentle rhythm, a self-soothing technique his grief counselor had taught him. The sound was quiet, just stone against skin, a soft whisper of friction. Lily's head turned, 1 degree to the left. Her eyes, previously fixed on nothing, tracked the movement of his hands. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his movements consistent. After 20 minutes, he pocketed his stone, stood up, and left. As the door closed behind him, he heard it. The smallest exhale, like someone had been holding their breath and finally felt safe enough to release it. On the fifth night, Marcus couldn't find a babysitter. Leo's usual after-school program had ended, and the neighbor who sometimes helped was out of town. He made a decision that probably violated a dozen building policies and brought his son to work. Leo Rivera was 9 years old, small for his age, with his mother's dark eyes and his father's quiet demeanor. He wore his yellow noise-canceling headphones, the ones that helped when the world got too loud, and carried a small cloth bag filled with his own collection of stones. "You have to stay quiet," Marcus signed to him in the elevator. "I'm working. You can sit and do your stones, but that's it." Leo nodded seriously. He was good at quiet. When they entered the therapy suite, the overnight attendant frowned but didn't object. Marcus was the best janitor they had, always on time, never caused problems. If he needed to bring his kid for one night, whatever. The twins were in their usual position, but when Leo sat down on the floor and pulled out his stones, something shifted. Their eyes moved, actually tracking, watching as he carefully arranged smooth pebbles in a spiral pattern, completely absorbed in his task. Leo didn't notice their attention. He was in his own world, arranging and rearranging, finding the perfect balance. Marcus worked nearby, dusting shelves that didn't need dusting, keeping one eye on all 3 children. After 30 minutes, Ruby's hand moved. Just her pinky finger, a tiny twitch. Then her whole hand lifted from her lap, trembling with the effort of 14 months of stillness, and placed itself palm down on the floor beside her. Marcus kept working, didn't react, didn't rush over or exclaim or do anything that might break whatever fragile thing was happening. By the time he and Leo left that night, both twins had moved their hands. Not much, but enough. On the 6th night, Marcus brought Leo again. This time he brought a tiger's eye stone, golden brown, with bands of lighter color running through it. When he placed it with the growing collection, he did something he'd been planning since he'd seen the twins' medical files accidentally left on the attendant's desk. He signed in American Sign Language. "This one is brave." Both girls went completely still, even more still than their usual frozen state, if that was possible. Their eyes locked on his hands with laser focus. Marcus continued signing, his movements slow and clear. "My name is Marcus. I won't hurt you. You don't have to talk." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Ruby's hands lifted from her lap, shaking, trembling with effort and fear, and something that might have been hope. She signed back. "How did you know?" "Know what?" Marcus signed. "That we understand. Your file mentioned your nanny, Sarah. It said she was deaf." Both girls' faces crumpled. Lily's hands moved, faster than her sister's, more desperate. "Sarah died. In the car. She was teaching us to sign. She said it was a beautiful language." "It is," Marcus signed. "She was right. People got mad when we signed after." Ruby's hands trembled. "Said we needed to use our voices. Said signing was avoidance." Marcus sat down, making himself smaller, less threatening. He signed carefully. "Signing is language, just as real as speaking. You can use it whenever you want with me. Promise?" Lily signed. Promise. That night, when Marcus and Leo left, both twins were sitting closer to the center of the room. Not much closer, but enough to matter. Victoria Chen's private investigator was expensive and thorough. By the end of the week, she had Marcus Rivera's complete history spread across her desk. Former occupational therapist at Children's Hospital, specialized in pediatric trauma and sensory integration. Wife Anna died 4 years ago during an emergency C-section. Raised his son alone. Son has sensory processing disorder and is semi-verbal. Rivera quit his OT position 2 years after his wife's death. No complaints, no incidents, just a resignation letter that said he needed to step back. He'd been working as a night janitor ever since. Victoria stared at the photo clipped to his employment file. Unremarkable face, kind eyes, the particular exhaustion of a parent who carried everything alone. This was the man who'd reached her daughters when 14 specialists couldn't. She made a decision. That night, instead of leaving at 6 like usual, she stayed, waited in her office with the lights off until she saw Marcus and his son exit the elevator on the 47th floor. 20 minutes later, she walked into the therapy suite. Marcus stood immediately when the door opened, professional instinct taking over. The twins, who had been showing Leo how they'd arranged the stones into patterns, went very still. "Please sit," Victoria said. Her voice came out softer than she'd intended. "I'm not here to stop this. I want to understand it." Marcus remained standing. "Mrs. Chen, I'm not doing therapy. I don't have that license anymore. But you're reaching them. In 6 weeks, you've accomplished something 14 specialists couldn't in 14 months. She moved closer, slowly, the way you'd approach something fragile. "I want to know how." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Your daughters aren't broken, Mrs. Chen. They're protecting themselves. After trauma, sometimes the body decides that stillness is safer than movement. That silence is safer than speech. I learned that when my son stopped talking after his mother died." Victoria's throat tightened. "The car accident. Their nanny Sarah. She died on impact." The girls were in the back seat, physically unharmed, but emotionally shattered. Marcus finished quietly. "I understand. My wife died while giving birth to Leo. He was born. She died. For 2 years afterward, he wouldn't speak, wouldn't make eye contact. He'd associated human connection with devastating loss. Every time someone tried to reach him, he'd shut down further." "How did you bring him back?" "I didn't." Marcus glanced at his son, who was carefully showing Ruby the difference between smooth stones and rough ones. "I didn't bring him back. I just created a space where coming back felt safe, where he didn't have to perform or prove he was okay, where being not okay was acceptable." Victoria looked at her daughters, really looked at them. They were more animated than she'd seen in over a year, engaged with Leo's demonstration, their hands moving in sign language as they communicated. "They know ASL," she said. "Sarah was teaching them before she died. Every therapist said they should stop, that it was avoidance, that they needed to use their voices. Maybe their voices weren't ready yet," Marcus said, "but their hands were." Victoria sat down on the floor, just lowered herself right there in her designer suit, and Saturday Marcus hesitated, then sat across from her. Between them, 3 children built stone towers and signed stories, and existed without pressure. "I don't know how to thank you," Victoria said after a while. "I'm not doing this for thanks. I'm doing it because I remember what it felt like when everyone wanted my son to be okay on their timeline instead of his own. Someone finally told me that healing isn't linear and you can't rush it. That permission saved us. Will you keep coming?" Marcus met her eyes. "If it helps them, yes." "It does. It really does." Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, maybe. 2 people who'd survived impossible things and were still trying to do right by small humans who needed them. 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. Victoria's ex-husband, Senator James Chen, hadn't been part of their daughters' lives since the accident. He'd taken one look at their catatonic state and decided they were too damaged for his carefully cultivated political image. The divorce had been ugly, but Victoria had gotten full custody easily. James hadn't even fought for it. Now, apparently, he'd changed his mind. The envelope arrived at Victoria's office via courier. Inside, a lawsuit. James was filing for emergency custody, claiming that Victoria's care was negligent and that the twins required intensive psychiatric treatment. His evidence included affidavits from 3 of the specialists who'd quit, all stating that the girls had shown no improvement under Victoria's supervision. But the worst part was the attached document, a lawsuit against Marcus Rivera for unlicensed practice of therapy and inappropriate contact with minors. Victoria's hands shook as she read the private investigator's report James had commissioned. Photos of Marcus alone with the twins after hours, Leo present. The implication was clear and disgusting. Her ex was weaponizing the only thing that had helped their daughters to destroy the man who'd given them hope. The hearing was set for 2 weeks away. Marcus received his own copy of the lawsuit at his apartment. The process server was apologetic but firm. Marcus read the documents twice, his mind going numb. Leo appeared in the doorway of their small kitchen signing, "Dad, what's wrong?" Marcus couldn't answer, couldn't form the signs. His hands felt like lead. Leo's face crumpled. "Are you in trouble? Like on TV? Are they going to take you away?" "No," Marcus signed quickly, forcing his hands to move. "No, buddy. I didn't do anything wrong." "Then why are you scared?" "Because the world doesn't always care if you're innocent," Marcus thought. "Because powerful people can destroy you just for being in the way." But he signed, "Sometimes people misunderstand. I'm going to fix it." Leo climbed into his lap, something he rarely did anymore at 9 years old. "If you marry Victoria, will you forget about me?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What?" "Leo, no. Never. But you love them now. Them and her. And they're not broken like me." "You're not broken." Marcus turned his son's face gently, making sure Leo could see his lips. "You're different. Different isn't broken. And I could never forget you. You're my son. You're my whole world. That doesn't change because I care about other people too. Promise?" "Promise." But that night, Marcus stayed awake long after Leo fell asleep, staring at the ceiling and wondering how many promises he'd be able to keep. The custody hearing took place in family court on a gray Tuesday morning. Victoria sat at one table with her lawyer, Marcus at another, with the public defender he'd been assigned. Senator James Chen sat with his own legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits. The twins were in a waiting room with a court-appointed guardian. They didn't know what was happening, only that something was wrong. James's lead attorney was a woman named Patricia Vance, sharp-featured and sharper-tongued. She presented her case with surgical precision. Victoria Chen had allowed an unlicensed man with a troubled background unsupervised access to vulnerable children. The twins had shown no measurable improvement. They required professional intervention, intensive residential treatment. She called Dr. Brennan, the court-appointed psychiatrist who'd evaluated the girls. He testified that in his professional opinion, the children showed signs of learned helplessness and required inpatient care. Victoria's lawyer countered with the overnight attendant's testimony, with documentation of the twins' increased movement and engagement. But it felt flimsy against the weight of professional credentials and institutional authority. Then they called Marcus to the stand. He walked up slowly, very aware of every eye on him. James's lawyers had done their job well. The photos they'd submitted made everything look sordid, suspicious. Patricia Vance approached him with a folder. "Mr. Rivera, you're not currently a licensed therapist, correct?" "No, ma'am. But you engaged in therapeutic interventions with the Chen twins." "I gave them stones and sat quietly. I didn't claim to be treating them." "You communicated with them using sign language, correct?" "Yes." Despite the fact that multiple specialists had recommended against signing, stating it enabled avoidance of verbal communication. "I don't agree with that assessment." "But you're not a specialist anymore, are you? You quit. Why was that, Mr. Rivera?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "My wife died. I needed time to care for my son." "Your son, who has developmental issues. Sensory processing disorder. It's not. You brought this child, with special needs of his own, into a therapeutic environment with vulnerable girls. Can you explain your thinking there? He's 9 years old. He needed supervision. He sat quietly and did his own activities. Did it occur to you that this was inappropriate? That you were using traumatized children as some sort of experimental subjects?" "No." Marcus's voice was firm now. "That's not what happened." "Then what did happen, Mr. Rivera? What made you think you were qualified to intervene when trained professionals had failed?" Marcus looked at Victoria. Then, at the closed door where he knew the twins waited, I remembered what saved my son. Someone who didn't need him to be okay to love him. Someone who gave him space to heal without pressure. Your specialists weren't failing because the twins are broken. They were failing because they were trying to force healing on someone else's timeline. That's a lovely theory. Do you have any credentials to back it up? Just experience. Patricia Vance smiled coldly. Experience. Well, Mr. Rivera, your experience has now resulted in these children regressing. In the 2 weeks since you were ordered to stay away, they've stopped moving again, stopped engaging. Your presence destabilized them, and your absence traumatized them further. That's not help. That's harm. The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair, intervened. Miss Vance, I think we've established your point. Mr. Rivera, you may step down. Marcus returned to his seat, feeling like he'd failed some crucial test. Then the judge said, I'd like to hear from the children. The courtroom went silent. Your Honor, Patricia Vance said carefully, the children are nonverbal. They haven't spoken in 14 months. I'm aware, but I'd still like them brought in. The bailiff opened the door. The court guardian led Lily and Ruby into the courtroom. They held hands, moving in perfect sync, their faces carefully blank. But their eyes scanned the room until they found Marcus. Something flickered in their expressions. The judge leaned forward slightly. Girls, I'm Judge Morrison. I know this is scary, but I need to understand what you want. Can you help me with that? Neither twin spoke. They just stood there, frozen. Then Leo appeared in the doorway. He'd been waiting with the guardian, too. He walked directly to the twins and took both their hands. The judge didn't stop him. Leo signed to them, his movements clear. Tell her. She'll listen. Tell her the truth. Lily looked at Ruby. Some silent communication passed between them. Then together they approached the judge's bench. Ruby began signing. Lily spoke the words aloud, their voices rusty but clear. We were in the car when Miss Sarah died. Ruby's hands moved while Lily's voice filled the courtroom. Then they switched. Lily signed while Ruby spoke. We thought if we stayed very still, maybe nothing else bad would happen. Maybe if we were quiet enough, small enough, we wouldn't be the next thing that broke. They alternated again, hands and voices trading places in perfect synchronization. Marcus didn't make us move. He didn't make us talk. He showed us it was safe to try. He gave us stones that felt good to hold when we were scared. He let us be quiet when we needed quiet. Judge Morrison's expression was unreadable. What do you want now? You can tell me. No one will be angry. The twins looked at each other, then at their mother, then at Marcus. Finally, they signed and spoke together, hands and voices unified. We want to stay with our mom, and we want to keep seeing Marcus and Leo. They're our family too. Senator James Chen stood abruptly. Your Honor, these children are clearly being coached. Ruby turned to face her father directly. She signed and spoke simultaneously, no hesitation. You left us because we weren't perfect anymore. Marcus stayed because we weren't. That's the difference. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Morrison sat back in her chair. After a long moment, she spoke. I'm denying the petition for emergency custody. Mrs. Chen will retain full custody. Residential treatment is not recommended at this time. Senator Chen, your request is dismissed. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Rivera, I'm recommending you pursue reinstatement of your occupational therapy license. These children need you, legally, not as a janitor, but as what you actually are, their therapist. She banged her gavel once. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Victoria found Marcus standing alone on the steps. Leo had taken the twins to get ice cream with Jennifer, giving the adults space. I'm sorry, Victoria said. For all of it. For not protecting you from James. For the pressure, for... You fought for your daughters, Marcus interrupted. That's what mattered. I almost lost them. And you. Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. But you didn't. What happens now? I get my license reinstated. Start seeing the girls officially. Do things properly. And us? Victoria's voice was quiet. Is there an us? Marcus stepped closer. Do you want there to be? Yes. Very much yes. They stood there on the courthouse steps. Two broken people who'd found each other while trying to heal children who needed them. Marcus reached out and took her hand. Then we'll figure it out, he said. Together. 6 months later, Marcus Rivera stood in the rooftop garden of Victoria's building, arranging 5 large stones in a circle. Each one represented someone in their strange, assembled family. Leo helped him position the last one, grinning. They're going to freak out, Leo signed. That's the idea, Marcus signed back. Lily and Ruby arrived first, led by a grinning Jennifer. They saw the stones and immediately understood. Their hands flew in excited signing. Then Victoria appeared. She saw Marcus kneeling by the stones, saw Leo, Lily, and Ruby each holding a sign. Will you marry us? Victoria's hands went to her mouth. All of you? All of us, Marcus confirmed. We want to be a real family. Officially. Tears streamed down her face. Yes. Yes to all of you. Yes to this weird, impossible, perfect family. The children rushed forward in a tangle of arms and laughter. Marcus stood and pulled Victoria close, kissing her while their children clung to them both. Leo signed, Does this mean I get sisters? If you'll have them, Marcus signed back. Okay, but I'm still not sharing my room. 1 year later, in the converted garage workshop of their new house, all 5 of them sat in a circle, teaching the girls how to polish stones. The rhythm of stone against stone filled the space, a gentle percussion of family life. Victoria watched her daughters, animated and present and alive, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the absence of pain, but something strong enough to hold the pain without being consumed by it. Marcus caught her eye and smiled. She smiled back. On the wall behind them hung a frame containing 5 polished stones arranged in a circle, each one different, each one necessary. Below it, a small plaque read, The Rivera, Chen family. Rough edges smoothed together. Sometimes healing doesn't come from forcing change. Sometimes it comes from someone who sees you completely, broken pieces and all, and says, you're enough exactly as you are. Someone who hands you something smooth to hold when the world feels too sharp. Someone who knows that patience isn't passive. It's the most active form of love. And sometimes the impossible is just that. Patience with a pulse. A janitor with stones in his pockets. And the radical belief that everyone deserves to be met where they are, not where others think they should be. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Drop a comment sharing one small act of kindness that changed your life. And share this with someone who needs hope today. Most importantly, subscribe to Humble Heart Stories so you never miss reminders that healing is possible. Till next time.